is Grace Tibbetts, and I'm here with my husband,
Ben Tibbetts.
and today we are going to do a debate. And the things I want to talk about today are current events, ancient history, and spirituality. And so I would like you to join me because I wanted to do this before Easter, because I think that a lot of things that are going on are relevant, and I would like to have a conversation about some things that may be a little controversial. So the first thing I want to talk about are current events, and I feel, and I'll ask my husband here, is that I feel like that current events are pretty much fed to us in a propaganda fashion to make us feel a certain way about subjects. And I'm going to say that a lot of it, when I look at the news and when I look at things, I think that the news tries to hit at our emotional core so that we feel a certain way about things, and then we react, and that's all we do. And I don't know how you feel about it, but that's how I feel. Like, they'll do a video and they'll do about like a poor little immigrant family that's just trying to get by, and then Mean ICE comes and they kick them out of the country and they put them in isolation and da-da-da. And then they do another news, like right on top of that, they do another news element in which they're like, this horrible bad immigrant who is a mass murderer came in and killed our innocent American 18-year-old sweetie pie, and he has this long, huge record. And then it mattering how you are on the political spectrum, you're in this crazy place emotionally. So I don't know, how do you feel about that?
So, my thoughts on the media. Is this where you're going with this?
For the moment.
So, I think the news cycles doesn't not give us accurate information.
Mm-hmm.
It's clearly biased, and they want to shape and mold how people think, how we react. It's not just the news. They have an agenda with whatever they tell us.
So I really think that it's almost like a mirage that they put on us as the American people to fool us, because, and I'm not saying fool us because it's not that these stories aren't true. It's that we will get upset, we will go to the streets, we will be on one side or the other, and then we will hate each other for it. And I think that's almost like what they're trying for us to hate, look at each other with hate and a bias, and just automatically be like, how can you allow this? Whatever side you're on.
Well, we have family members who state, well, if this is your political views, erase this from your feed book, I don't ever want to talk to you again.
Yes.
And it's all purely because of
something outside of us. It's not even like I know someone who knows someone who this happened to. It's more like, this is in the news feed right now. This is where I stand on this issue. Therefore, I hate you.
Yeah, and that's purely because they've been fed news cycles and articles, and
not even we've been fed the same articles.
No, I don't think so.
Right. When we choose the articles that we like, say you are in the camp. Okay, I'm just gonna say it, the MAGA camp. Okay, if you're in the MAGA camp, you're gonna do like the more patriotic, not patriotic, okay, you're going to do more on the line of the Republican side of things, and you're going to keep watching those news articles, and then you're going to get really upset about what's going on. Versus if you're on the liberal side of things, you're going to choose those articles to read, and then you're going to get all upset about what's going on. And then you're going to find the people who have voted a certain way, and you're going to say, you voted for this. How dare you?
Yeah. So what's your next question?
So that's the next one. So the next one is the reason that I think that this is all being done is because they don't want us to see who, I guess, what our real, not even our enemy is, but the powers that are manipulating history. Because I feel like we're almost like in a mirage that we can't wake up from, because it's a mirage that's been handed to us. And if you look at history, and I'm gonna go way back in history, like, because I am someone who likes to read a lot, and I love ancient history. And and here's where I'm going to bring in spiritualism, because in America, we have a very Christian background. We'll just say that. And I have been a Christian, and I am someone who believes in Jesus. But I feel like we're being led to only support Israel no matter what they do. And the reason that we're being kind of spoon-fed this is because the Old Testament and the New Testament are kind of joined together. And so that has given a very strong argument that we have to support, as a Christian, we have to support Israel no matter how we feel about what their leadership does. I do believe that Israel has completely a right to exist. However, for us as a country, the United States, to be lockstep with whatever Israel wants, Israel gets, I don't agree with that.
So I don't know where you're coming from here. I don't see that we're lockstep with them. I see that we are bombing Iran along with them.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see how that's being lockstep with Israel.
Well,
Us attacking Iran was for our country's benefit as well.
how is it our country's benefit?
Well, let's see. For how many years have they been chanting death to America?
Mm-hmm.
And they finally just got some nuclear rockets which can reach the U.S. They have one nuclear rocket which they have not used yet. And then, maybe they haven't figured it out yet, or they've had a lot. Just recently they shot like 190 of the Mach 5, the new hypersonic missiles that they bought from China. The missiles failed.
Mm-hmm.
So they know they have one nuclear missile, long range ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile. They haven't used it yet because maybe they want to make sure that when they fire it, it's actually going to hit. Because you launch a nuclear weapon, you want to make sure that it achieves the goal that you're going for. You don't want to launch your only one and have it fail, because that's like having an ace card.
Right.
Now, why is it in our benefit to attack them?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they fired off rockets that are reaching all the way up to England and France and Germany, so they have long-range missiles. They're right on the cusp of having the nuclear weapons. They have a huge stockpile of the nuclear material, which is like 90% refined, and over a short period of time, I mean, they could talk to Kim Jong Un, and I'm sure he'd send over a couple scientists and help them convert it the rest of the way. He'd gladly help them.
Right.
And so we're trying to disarm. The majority, to my understanding, is that we're taking out their armaments and their capability to make weapons. I don't think it is in our interest to send in boots on the ground and send in our soldiers to overthrow and topple the government. That's none of our business. If we want to arm their civilians so their civilians can fight for their freedom or democracy or whatever government they want to have, that's, we can provide them weapons so they can do so. That's not our job. But our job of taking out, the weapons so they can't. And just like, that Strait of Hormuz right now, they're choking off the shipping for the whole world. And, so us taking out their weapons and their arsenals so they can't do that is in our best interest.
I guess my hard point, okay, this is my hard point, okay, because they have, and yes, there was the October 7th attack on the Jewish people at that festival, which was horrendous. However, Israel, in response, has completely decimated the Palestinians and killed off a lot of innocent civilians. And then they went off and they also bombed Lebanon, which is no business of theirs to do. And then now we're doing a straight up attack on Iran, which is more in the interest of Israel than it is in the interest of the United States. And then to top it off, the Christian services in Jerusalem, in old Jerusalem, are being completely suppressed because the Jewish authorities have said, no, we're not doing that. I just don't feel like when it comes to the Jews and the Christians, I don't feel like just because the Old Testament and the New Testament are conjoined doesn't mean that the Jewish people are friends of the Christians. It's something that we in America have assumed for a very long time, simply because we have a similar religion together. But just because of that doesn't make us automatic allies.
So, can I interject now?
You can definitely interject.
All right. So, Google just did a Google search. I mean, you bring up the October 7th attack.
Yeah.
Well, since 9/11/2001, the AI quickly pulled up 31,000 Islamic terrorist attacks. That's up to 2019. I was watching a video the other day that said there was actually, the current number, because this was 7 years ago, is up over 50,000 Islamic terror attacks since 2001. So 24 years, 50,000 attacks. So it's not just the October 7th. The whole Islamic, and that's the thing is, the parameters of the search was Islamic terror attacks. It's not just the October 7th. And the biggest contributor to arming terrorists has been Iran. They arm Hezbollah and, the Islamic Brotherhood and Hamas.
Yeah.
They're the ones that fund it. And, the leaders of Iran, they're not even Iranians. It's the Islamic Brotherhood that captured Iran.
Yeah.
So it's not, I don't feel like we are just attacking Iran for the benefit of Israel. I think, we're, this year, the Islamic Brotherhood slayed almost 50,000 of their own civilians.
Oh, I know.
And, so us doing what we're doing is more of a, helping free their people. I think the population is like 90 million people. and they're not even run by their own country. They're actually, they're hostages.
Mm-hmm.
They're a conquered country. So, I support us taking out, and freeing their people.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that we should arm their people so that they can free themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're less likely to run around and harm innocent civilians if it's their own country people versus, you send over a foreign military, going door to door to door. How are we going to identify which one is, the good guy, which one's a bad guy? Where they all look the same to us.
Right.
But you armed their civilians, and their civilians know who's been oppressing them and killing their neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Well, then, yeah. So right now, from my understanding of watching the news clips, and how much
Right.
is true or not,
Definitely.
they stated that as of a certain date recently, we had completed 10,000 targets successfully taken out, and they currently have a list of 3,500 more targets.
Mm-hmm.
And that is their, when they started this invasion process, we weren't going in to conquer. They had a list of ammunitions, factories that make the drones, make the bombs, make the weapons that are dished out to Hamas and Hezbollah and whoever else wants to buy it to do a terror attack.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, what we're doing is actually saving thousands and thousands of lives. They've been chanting for decades, death to America.
Right.
Death to Israel. So, we're not just doing this for Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Israel may have misled us by telling the president that it would be over faster if we took out the heads.
Right. Well, I think
but
that we believed that we were gonna. But I guess my problem is that we're almost crashing the U.S. and the world economy deliberately by doing this war and blocking the Strait of Hormuz. And suddenly now everything's in this tailspin of economic downturn that will affect the United States, will affect the entire world. And did we just kick a hornet's nest?
Well, if we've taken out 10,000 targets and we've taken out their factories and set them back decades on being able to wage war,
Mm-hmm.
I think right now is actually a great, we have a president that is willing to do it. You look back a couple presidents before, and Obama sent them billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And giving them money to paying off, terrorists, they're just going to take the money and buy more bombs, versus taking out their ability to do it. Well, go ahead, let's take the time, let's take away their ability to wage war, help their citizens fight for their own country, and then that will allow a chance for freedom and growth in the future.
Well, I look at Islam itself, and it seems like it's almost it's a fatalistic cult. So the problem I have with a fatalistic cult is that they will be willing to die in order to go straight to heaven. And so they're willing not only to die for themselves, but they're also willing to sacrifice their children. They're willing to sacrifice anything and everything to get to the cause of wherever it is that they're trying to get to. And so I guess for me, part of the problem with bombing a country like Iran, like Lebanon, like Hamas, like Hezbollah, which the Houthis, all of these different groups, is that you're actually radicalizing more people that wouldn't have been radicalized. But instead, that when they see, say, their brothers die and their sisters die and the people around them die and their buildings all collapse, that you're actually radicalizing an entire new generation of people who were not radicalized before, who are like death to America and death to Israel, versus
I think the radical ones are already radicalized. I mean, they've been groomed. The ones that are out there are out there. Doesn't matter whether we dropped a bomb on them or not. If they had a gun and we were standing there, they would take the shot.
Yep. I do agree with you on that. But I mean, I guess,
I think a big issue that you're having right now is, our son is nearing that age where he can be deployed. And, throughout history, every mother goes through that and doesn't want it to be her son.
And obviously, I've been in the military. I know the risks, but I also know that, I don't want my son to be used for a cause that, this is a cause that is not my son's. This is not a cause that, my son doesn't wake up in the morning and say, oh, I can't wait to go to Iraq or Iran or Afghanistan and go, fight for my country, but I don't know if in America, it's so far away. Is this what we should be doing?
So I think that's the mistake that the U.S. made during World War II. The Germans and the Japanese were doing whatever they were doing, attacking other countries, and we just sat back and said, well, Germany's attacking Poland, that's not our problem.
And isolationism, yes, we did do that.
Until it became our problem.
Mm-hmm.
And, so putting it in perspective to today's world, we can't just sit back and say, well, Iran's not sending suicide bombers to our cities right now. They're not terrorizing our neighborhood. Well, it's not a very hard line, very easy for them to cross our southern border. Mm-hmm. And, we've got millions of military-age young men that have crossed over the last several years. It could be bombs going off in our neighborhood pretty soon. Mm-hmm. And so taking out, the funding, they're built, I think overtaking this regime should have been done 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So you're kind of looking at it as like take out the head of the snake type of scenario. And if we take out the head of the snake, everything else dies.
Well, taking out the head of the snake and taking, we've taken away the majority of their Air Force, their Navy, and take away their ability to wage war on their population, mm-hmm. Their population will finish the job. Mm-hmm. I think, the U.S. being the world's police, or however you want to look at it, is, we have the military might, the technology to do it with the least amount of damage to ourselves. Mm-hmm. Yes, there have been some of casualties on our side, but they've had 10,000 successful hits so far. And, the fact that Iran already had, a couple hundred of the Chinese, hypersonic missiles, we don't have those yet. Mm-hmm. So, they have been gearing up, and it would have been a matter of time before they were striking out, mm-hmm. and using what they have. So, us getting our first strike, and they've been telling us for years that they were going to bomb us. Mm-hmm. Well, they have one nuclear bomb right now, and they've got all the resources to make quite a few more. Well, now's the time to, remove, before they bomb New York City or Kentucky or Tennessee or whatever, go ahead and bomb New York City right now. but before they do it, take away the chance, and how many millions of lives are we saving? Because, our country did this now.
Yeah. So
That's my perspective. And yes, it sucks. you know, having a child that goes off to war.
Mm-hmm.
You pray it's not your kid, and you pray that if he does, he comes back in one piece.
Yeah.
I don't think any parent can sit there and, I don't think it's healthy for a parent to dwell on, no, don't take my kid, don't take my kid, don't take my kid. And, you know, you can't worry about things. You got to pray for it.
Well, and you know, having been in the military, I have to say that, you know, I knew that these were always possibilities, that when you sign that dotted line, you're giving them your life, and you don't get to, it's not like there's no takebacks. Okay, so you can't be like, I decided I don't want to go.
Yeah. Oh, you called my number? Well,
I decided today is not. I have to do my hair. Okay, I just have to do my hair. So I guess my biggest thing though is I've heard. So the other thing that I have a problem with is the Epstein files came out more or less a week before we struck Iran, and they were bad. They were really bad. And I was like, and I think most Americans were like, they all need to be prosecuted. They all need to go to jail. What the hell? And then this thing happened with Iran and everyone forgot about it. And I almost think that this was used as a distraction from what actually needs to be prosecuted against. I mean, it's like a satanic cult with our leaders and our financial institution leaders in which they use children. And I'm not going to get into details about it, but I almost think that they bombed Iran to stop them talking about the Epstein files.
I don't think it was the Epstein files. You know, I think it's unrelated.
You think it's unrelated?
You know, my opinion is, you know, Trump being the president, yes, he was in the Epstein files, but I don't think he had done anything bad in the Epstein files.
I don't care
Well,
if he had or had not done something bad. What I care about is that the people who are in them need to be arrested. They need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And then he released them, and then nothing happened. And it all got redacted, and then there's 3 million
3.5 million, yep.
that are still not, we don't even get access to. But the ones that were released were so horrible. And it's like, oh, over here we have the Epstein files. And oh yes, they were really bad, but hey, look, we just bombed Iran. Can we talk about Iran now?
Well, so the reason why I was stating that was Trump being the leader of the country and him not being the one that, you know, is in trouble from the Epstein files. It makes me lead to be, you know, if it was Biden president right now, Epstein files are released, you know, him and the Clintons, absolutely, yes, go bomb Iran. They're doing that as a cover-up.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that, you know, I have faith in our president and vice president, that, I mean, yeah, he's done some things. I mean, he's a guy, you know. Yes, he shouldn't have said those things on the bus. Grab her right by the, you know. But he was a guy, you know, that was locker room jokes. He was a young man. Inappropriate for a president, but, I mean, a young guy on a bus hanging out with a couple of his buddies. You know, I can't say I didn't hear worse in my locker room when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but none of us are running for president, so it didn't matter when we weren't recorded.
Right.
But, you know, so I don't think that us bombing Iran had anything to do with that. You know, just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if the Democrats were in power and the Epstein's files were released because of all the negative feedback in there about a bunch of them, then I would say, yeah, this is, a diversion of your attention. But I don't, personally, it's not what I believe. I think they're unrelated. Just like I think, Trump being in power right now, he's trying to get things done, while he's still president. He took out Venezuela, which the Venezuelan population absolutely needed it. Their dictator was just as bad as Iran. Their people have been fleeing the country. Millions and millions of people have fled Venezuela. Corrupt government, take out the corruption. Right now, he'll still have a couple of years left. I don't even think it took him a month. Our buildup of the attack was longer than the actual.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And I think, he was looking at Iran as this in the same lens. Iran's had a lot stronger military, a lot more missiles. And Venezuela was not running around for the last 40 years saying, death to America, like Iran was. And I think that after our success in Venezuela, I say success because as new leadership, I think it might be as vice president stepped up or whatever, but they're opening up their country and they're being nicer to their population. And I think, they saw within 30 days, Venezuela did a take back. And I think he, in some old office somewhere, our leadership looked around and says, hey, we've been, dealing with Iran for over 40 years, 50 years. I think it's closer to 50 now because it's 25 versus 1970. So 50 years. And let's just get this done. So we're going in, we haven't even been a month. The president gets leeway for a short period of time before Congress has to vote on it and approve it. And, and we've, so far he's taken on 10,000 targets. He has 3,500 more targets. Their goal right now is within 2 weeks, we will have taken out all the military targets that they were designated towards. And I'm hoping that after that point, he packs it up, says mission completed, ships come home, or ships go on to whatever. They're, it is, protect the Strait of Hormuz. We'll be transporting weapons to their population or to whatever militia group is going to help stabilize Iran or Iran or however you want to pronounce it. But I don't see this as a bad thing. And when you look and you see all these Iranian citizens around the world that are dancing and praising Trump and saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean, how can I be angry at our president for doing that?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, our son might go to war, but I'd rather him be in our military than in Iranians' military.
Yeah.
And I'd rather him go to war under this president than, a president that pulls out of Afghanistan and leaves our troops and weapons behind.
Yeah, I was not very happy about that.
They left American citizens, American soldiers behind.
Yeah.
Trump has done everything in his power to free U.S. citizens in captivity, been arrested in other countries. I just, there are so many things he's done right, and there are some things he's done wrong, but, in the overall, this is why I support him.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for this debate, and thank you all for watching. This is Grace Tibbetts and Ben Tibbetts, and
she got me fired up, and now she's having to have a good night.
Have a great night.